Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sydney St. James Show. We got a real good one for you today. We're going to back up in time many years when I was in high school, and my teacher asked me would I compete in poetry interpretation. Gosh, I didn't even know how to spell the word interpretation, but because there was a real pretty girl going along, I decided I'd join the team, and I did. And we picked out a real important poem to talk about and to interpret. So, off to Victoria, Texas I went, and my story is about the road less taken. Thanks for joining me today. This poem is often quoted and used with an interpretation that is not exactly correct. The popular belief is that Frost meant for this poem to be about hope, success, and define the odds by choosing a path or a path that was less traveled by. On the other hand, if the poem is reviewed like we're going to do today, it is pretty apparent that it is fairly the opposite connotation. It is Robert Frost's first poem in his book Mountain Interval that he wrote in 1916. A popular pleasantry misconstrued poem since its release, its simplicity and way with words demonstrate the great skill of the poet's fountain pen. The road not taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way. I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Robert Frost. Now, before we break this poem down and do what I had to do many years ago, a poetry interpretation of the poem, one needs to picture in their mind what the poem just said. So this is where I always ask my listeners, kind of sit there, close your eyes, and picture what I'm about to say. Here we go. A young man hiking through a forest is abruptly confronted with a fork in his path. He pauses, his hands are down in his pockets, and looks back and forth between his options. What should he do? As he hesitates, images from possible futures flicker past him. He sees a young man wading into the most crystal blue waters of the ocean. He sees a man hitchhiking, or he's riding a bus, or, as I hope to do on my bus trip to the competition, the kissing of a beautiful woman, or working, laughing, eating, running, even crying. Then the young man's mind goes dark and opens right back up into a different series of a different young man. This young man has got his thumb held high up on the side of the road. Beside him is his Texas Aggie duffel bag, and the highway is the one running between Rosenberg, Texas and Eagle Lake, Texas. He looks down the road, hopefully a ride coming his way, and a car slows down to pick him up. The man looks up and could swear it was a man he was familiar with. This is when he finally realizes the driver is the original man from the two crossroads. Only now, he's accompanied by a beautiful woman and a child in a child seat between them. The man smiles slightly, as if confident in the life he has chosen and happy to lend that confidence to a fellow traveler. As the car pulls away and the screen in his mind flashes and shows a wide rainbow crossing his mind. For what it's a commercial we've all been watching on the Hallmark Channel. The cover of Sidney St. James' next best-selling novel briefly appears. As I mentioned earlier, this poem is probably the most misunderstood poem, and probably why Mrs. Elizabeth Booth, my English teacher, suggested it for my poetry interpretation competition. You know, Robert Frost's poetic masterpiece is arguably the most infamously misunderstood poem ever written. Marrying elements of form and content, and I know I use some big words here, but arresting the artistic phraseology and metaphors, the poem is mainly read without being understood. The typical mystery is the primary attraction of the poem. Readers instantly relate to their own personal experiences. Forks in the woods, or the yellow woods, or all the different terms used in his poem are figurative devices relating to the decisions and to disasters. Similar forks are representative of everlasting struggles against fate and free will. Since we are free to choose, our destiny is totally unknown. Take an example. When I was young, I was bulletproof. I could double my speed limit in my 54 Ford and go around the curves between Columbus and Eagle Lake, and that should be no problem, right? Even if I didn't make it one time. The car probably will never be the same, but I was bulletproof, and I came out without a scrape. So I wouldn't dare do that today to save my life. No longer do I even think closely that I'm bulletproof. Now the poem, The Road Not Taken, actually steers clear of advising on selecting a definitive path. Frost's take on this is slightly complicated. The grassy roads, the yellow woods, they all represent the present as the individual views from a future perspective. The future self will regret his decision to take the road less traveled. In hindsight, his regret is everlasting. I know I've used some big words and talked around in some circles, and you're sitting there and you're shaking your head and you don't quite understand, or maybe everything is misunderstood like the poem, what I'm talking about. So let's do what I did those many years ago and take a moment and look at the first stanza of the poem. I'll read it again for you. Two roads diverged into a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. A road not taken opens with such solid imagery because of the diction used to depict the two physical roads separating from each other in just 3 words: a yellow wood. Much like the photo I used to represent the cover art for this episode. Obviously, the forest at this time is showcasing its fall colors in all the leaves. Then there's line 2. It's a rapid display of the theme of regret by revealing that the individual is already apologetic before deciding which road he's gonna take. We basically find ourselves observing a crucial moment where he has to make a decision that is evidently difficult for him. Then there's lines 3 to 5. These lines express that the individual is trying to see as far as his eyes take him down each road. He's even squinting his eyes tightly and looking. In my cover art, both roads, as they split, disappear into the woods in either chosen direction. It makes it very difficult for him to decide which one he should take. Then the first 2 lines of the stanza introduce the dilemma that every human being faces, not once, but many times in their lives: the difficulty of choice. Although we as people go through many circumstances in life and experiences in our lives, one is chosen between 2 or more paths. This is experienced literally in the roads we take and the routes we walk daily and figuratively. When we come to points in our lives where we must make decisions for our next steps based on the opportunities presented to us, and like the character in The Road Not Taken, we are often so disappointed that we cannot hold on to and experience the consequences of every opportunity presented to us. But to gain some things in life, we really must let others go. By having the character in the poem examine the roads up ahead, Frost emphasizes that we all try our best to guess what lies ahead for us and every opportunity that we're presented to find some control and later comfort over our final decisions. We like to take our time to make informed decisions to justify our choices when the regret of missing out on the other roads starts to haunt us and make us second guess ourselves. I know this is getting a little difficult at times as we break down each stanza, but try to follow me as best as you can. Let's go ahead now and move along and take a gander at the second stanza. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. In this second stanza, in lines 6 through 8, the individual in The Road Not Taken finally decides and chooses a road that he thinks and he believes is better because it looked like not many people had walked on it before, from all the fallen leaves from the fall that covered it. However, in lines 9 and 10, he is quick to add that the other road looked equally used compared to the one he chose. So it really was not as less traveled as he was telling himself. And the last two lines of the stanza, they're important because they clarify the common misunderstanding that one road was less traveled than the other, since the character clearly says that both roads were really about the same. The expression in the stanza portrays the character's uncertainty as he tries to justify himself that his decision is the right one for him. And much like anyone else, he is trying to realistically weigh the outcomes of both of the roads. Let me read just those last three lines in that stanza again. Because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. The essential idea to note in these lines is that the character claimed the road he chose was better. So if that's true, it was better, why was it better? Because it wanted wear? Meaning that it was tempting him maybe? He felt that the route he decided wanted to be walked on by him. Now this underlines the nature of people in general, that we will always choose the path that seems attractive and is of interest to us, even if both paths have the equal potential of getting us to wherever we're headed. No matter where we end up, and no matter how informed we are, or tempting and satisfying our choices are, we will always wonder about the what ifs and the could have been of the other opportunities we left behind. And I will discuss those other opportunities we left behind right after a word from my sponsor, the fella that helps me keep the lights on around this place. Until then, hang in there, and I'll be right back. Have you heard about Anchor.fm by Spotify? It's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Yep, Anchor has the tools that will allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Well, I'm back. You know, as I think about these what ifs and what could have been in my earlier part of my life, I do this a lot of times when I'm doing my podcast, and I shoot questions over at my beautiful and lovely wife that sits across from me in her office. And we discuss the roads we took in finding one another and where we are today. What if she didn't meet me at the Winchester Club, a country western dance hall, that very first night? What if she had a long day at Seismograph Service Corporation and was tired and had pulled an all-nighter picking velocities or whatever it might have been, and she only wanted to get some sleep, but her roommate convinced her to tag along and come and meet this handsome dude? Well, maybe she didn't say handsome, I'm only saying that about myself, but anyhow, what if? Let me give you another example of what if. Let me interject for a moment what I'm talking about. In the late 1950s, my mom had a decision to make. She came to some crossroads. Did she choose Sam Walton as her steady boyfriend, or depart Bentonville, Arkansas, and go to the big city of Little Rock for her career? She chose Little Rock. And later, she met my dad, where she remained married happily ever after in Eagle Lake, Texas, where her final resting place is. The what ifs? Right. Oh yes. Just in case you don't know who Sam Walton is, have you ever heard of Walmart? Now let's move along through our third stanza. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. Robert Frost mentions in these lines that when this individual was making his decision, both paths were nearly identical. No one had stepped through to disturb the leaves on both of the roads. Now, line 13 is a crucial point in this poem, The Road Not Taken, when the individual finalizes his decision to leave the other road for maybe just another time. Then line 14 and 15, it gives us glimpses of his doubts. He honestly confesses to himself that it's doubtful he will ever come back to travel this other road, because he knows as he moves forward, he will continue to find different paths, taking him further and further away from this point where he is standing at that very moment. Let me read lines 11 and 12 again. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. These lines show us that this character is genuinely being honest with himself as he makes the crucial decision of which road to take. His honesty is a reality check, you might say, and a means of making that final decision. He notices that both of his choices lay equally in front of him. Again, he looks one way and he looks the other, and neither of these choices had been trodden black. Sometimes in life, when we reach that fork in the road, we can make quick decisions based on what we learn from other people's experiences. These experiences then leave marks on the choices that we have. These marks then form our bias towards or against that particular path. So, when we encounter choices in our lives where we find that the leaves are not trodden black, but what we learn from the people around us, it becomes even much harder to decide between them, just like the character's situation in The Road Not Taken. After making his decision, he then exclaims that he will leave the first choice for another day. Then, he honestly tells himself that if he lets this road go now, there's really no coming back. There are many defining decisions in our life that shape our future. And sometimes when we select an option in these particular moments, they change the course of our life. And there is really no turning back. That's where the regret of not exploring our other options disturbs us. Now there's one last stanza in the poem. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. My friends, in this last stanza, lines 16 and 17, the individual predicts that one day far, far into the future, he knows he'll be telling the story of this decision that he's now making. Lines 18 and 19 expose that he intends to lie and claim he took the less traveled road. But in reality, both were equally traveled. Finally, the last line expresses that the individual is also planning to claim that his choice to take this more minor traveled road made all the difference in where he will be standing at the time. These lines of the last stanza highlight the nature of the poem and the man's regrets. When it comes to tough decisions in our lives, we always know that no matter what we finally choose, eventually we will regret not trying the possibility that was left uncharted by us. In this stanza, the character is already imagining the regret he will feel and decides that he will not be honest when he retells the story of his decision, as it will not validate his selection of the road if he showcases his regret by stating that an equal opportunity could have landed him elsewhere in life. Before we close today and take some questions from our listeners, let's take a look at the last 3 lines of Robert Frost's poem. 2 roads diverged into a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. He decides he will tell people he chose the road that was less traveled by, to come across as a person who took a chance and succeeded in life. But in reality, the character is trying to convince himself that when he shares his life experiences and distorts the truth, even though no matter how minor it is, it will seem that taking this road made all the difference. This teaches readers that they never know where life will take them, so pre-planning what the end of the road looks like for themselves and building regret is trivial, especially if they haven't even started the journey in the first place. Life is about the paths that you choose to walk through, not about the road not taken. In my research into the depths of the poem, I found that Robert Frost lived in England between 1912 and 1915. There he developed a very good friendship with another poet by the name of Edward Thomas. Often they went for walks, long walks in the evenings, and one day, as they were strolling along the waterside, they came across 2 roads diverging in different directions. Thomas was indecisive about which way to take. When Frost returned to New Hampshire in 1915, he wrote a poem called The Road Not Taken. He sent the copy to Thomas, and it compelled him to get rid of his indecisiveness concerning other things in his life. One would be to travel back to America with Robert, or to send his family to America and stay and fight in World War I. He made the decision to stay and fight. And Edward Thomas never returned to America to his family, because his decision to remain World War I took his life. Now, some people say that the poem that Robert Frost wrote, sent it to him, helped make up his mind. Otherwise, he was going to come to America. Robert Frost took a little bit of blame in his very best friend going to war and losing his life. But when I first sent this out, I got several friends and different listeners and so forth that asked me some questions I thought were good questions. And I'd like to share 3 or 4 of those questions with you today before I close. One of the questions is, let's see here. I got it right here in front of me. How did the poem get its name? The Road Not Taken. It's titled The Road Not Taken for an interesting reason. In the poem, the road which is not taken by the speaker is the one that is interesting, similar to the other road that he takes. The poet mentions the first road in the title for emphasizing the dominant thought in the speaker's mind. If there's only one road, there won't be any problem. But as there are 2 choices, he struggles to make a decision and suffers through prolonged indecisiveness. Even if he takes a path, might be suitable to him, who knows, still, he'll be thinking of the other one. Why didn't he choose the other path? We often think of this in a pattern. So, the poet advises us not to get just too engrossed in such thoughts. Another question I received was, what do the words "a yellow wood" mean at the first start of the poem, The Road Not Taken? The phrase yellow wood symbolizes a changes in abstract idea. It's also a symbol for the season. It's autumn. The color, the imagery of the woods and all the changing colors, especially up in the Northeast. The roads diverged into the woods. So, it means that no matter what route the speaker takes, there will be a change in his life. It is up to him how he reacts to it. And a question I got here, this one comes in from Scotland. The road not taken, is it about regret or is it about appreciation? Well, the road not taken, I sincerely believe, is about regret. In a superficial reading, it may seem that the poet appreciates the speaker's decision, but analyzing the text thoroughly will reveal that the speaker regrets the choice he makes even before its actual implementation. And there was another question that I got. Let's see where this one is from. This is from my daughter. She lives in Monroe, Georgia. Why did Robert Frost think when writing the poem that he would never, ever come back? The poetic persona doubts if he should ever come back or not. If he takes a road, he has to follow wherever it takes. There will be ways that will lead him to other ways, but in the process, he won't have enough time to return at this juncture and choose the road not taken. And my last question that I've got was, why did Robert Frost choose the road less traveled? Robert Frost's speaker chose that road less traveled as he had to make a decision. Otherwise, he would have gotten stuck at that particular place forever. So, for the sake of continuing life's journey, he took the other road, the one less traveled by. So, no matter what happened to him, he had to make a decision. Well, that's it for today. All right. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sidney St. James Show, and you can find more wherever ebooks, paperbacks, and audiobooks are sold worldwide. And, of course, right here on this channel. Thank you, Anchor FM. And thank you, listeners, for listening all the way through this podcast. I appreciate you so much. And I hope that you take some valuable information from this episode and apply it in one way or another into some tiny part of your life. Speaking of applying in your life, we have a lot of things coming up this year that you can definitely use to help you grow your business and or your lives and maintain them. So get more email subscribers, all those kind of things. So if that sounds great to you, please make sure you subscribe. And if you're not subscribed, I would love to help you. Hit subscribe or follow so you don't miss any other episodes. Also, thank you in advance for all the reviews that are coming in. They come in every single day, and my team and I will read and review every single one of them. I appreciate them so much. And I look forward to serving you in the next episode. So hit subscribe, and I'll see you then. Oh, and yes, if you are listening on Anchor FM, you can click on a voice message tab and ask me a question or leave me any comments you'd like to do, and I'll be sure to reply on one of my future podcasts. So for now, cheers, take care, and as always, see you later, alligator.